Breaking down the Canes here at the Voice of College Football. It's, of course, officially the off season, so we kick off a long off season, hopefully a productive off season. We got the Wholesome One here. Join him on his YouTube channel, Wholesome One Holloway. Here he is. He does the film breakdowns on a regular basis, so get on over there, Wholesome One Holloway. You will see it on the banner below. So hopefully you're subscribed there. You need to be. And right here at the Voice of College Football. Wholesome One, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. This is the time where we actually win games. The off season. We're winners in the off season. We're recruiting champions. We're transfer portal champions. We're paper champions. So the fun part of when we win at Miami has finally started. Because on the football field, we didn't do much of that. So, the fun part of what we got going on is here, and the debates and going back and forth with Tallahassee and Florida Gator fans and things of that nature on social media. It is finally upon us, the dreaded off season.
Yeah, well, I will tell you that when I brought up the Pitt game last week and you told me we got no chance, it's not happening, we're not going to a bowl game, I thought, well, that's a bit much. That's a bit harsh. That's a bit – I know you always tell the truth and always lay it out there the way you see it. I knew that there was no angle to it. It was just that's the way you saw it. But I saw it more as, yeah, I think Pitt's going to win the game, but I think Miami's got a good shot. It's only like a 6-point spread. They're at home. They're playing for a bowl game. Got an oddsmaker guy that comes on our channel on a regular basis. He laid out some elaborate numbers about when teams are at 5 and 6 and they have to win to make a bowl game, how good their winning percentage is when they've got that incentive. And I thought, I don't think they're going to win, but Pitt's not that good. And my goodness, it's 28-0 at half, and it's
yeah, man. This year didn't go well, and there's going to be years like that. Hopefully, no more moving forward. But unfortunately, when you study this game, you watch this game, you study how this sport, specifically college football, is. There's times where extremely talented teams, quote unquote talented teams, first-year coaches, third-year coaches, sixth-year coaches, they have a really bad season. And just unfortunately, the University of Miami football program has tied together a bunch of those. It's again, to think that we were going to make a bowl, in my opinion, was just a level of faith that I had not seen in this team in weeks. Most of our games were completely unwatchable, completely embarrassing, just complete blowouts. Didn't look like we could move the ball at all on offense, and no one knew what they were doing on offense. Defensively, completely blown over the top, and great and horrible communication skills. It was just really, really tough to watch, and tough to evaluate. And you get to this week, and news comes out from Manny Navarro, who's a very plugged-in South Florida, works for the Miami Herald, I believe, comes out and says that according to his sources, there were plenty of Miami Hurricanes players that barely wanted to practice and were hoping that they lost this game so that they wouldn't have to go through the 16 practices of a bowl game in and of itself. So you got guys like that in your locker room, that guys, and even if it's 5 guys, and we talked about this before, Mark, those amount of people can spread that mentality through the rest, and it spreads like wildfire. And it's extremely unfortunate. And I could tell by what we're about to get into with the mass exodus of Miami Hurricanes players that something was not clicking. Whether it be the players, whether it be the coaches, whether it be the attitude, whether it be the culture, whether it be we wanted the turnover chain to stay. Whatever mentality it was, it could not click, and it did not click to the tone of 5 and 7, with 6 of your games being complete blowouts and unwatchable past the middle of the third quarter.
It would be interesting to know the names of those players, then to evaluate how good of players they are. So I'm going to take a guess. I got nothing to go on, but if you go back 20 years, doesn't Ed Reed, does he not win a bowl game and not want extra practices? A guy that doesn't need any extra practice. You know, it's always the marginal guys, the guys that are kind of they got some talent. They can play if they'd ever apply themselves, but their careers are kind of just going along, and they may have some playing time and whatever, but they're not, probably wasn't the best players on the team that didn't want to keep
Well,
going.
Mark, I will say, from my guesstimation, or as they say in the scientific world, my hypothesis,
Yeah.
as educated guesstimation, I would have to say that there are also some guys that were very talented that just weren't getting their way here.
Yeah.
Guys that were used to, it's just, in my opinion, such a bad culture. And it's so hard to say that. Mark, we throw that term out there. Coaches got to change the culture. Coaches got to change the culture. Coaches got to bring in whatever culture they want. When you use that term, the term culture, it has so many different definitions. What does that mean when someone says change the culture? Well, if you got a new coach, 9 times out of 10, I would say 7 times out of 10, because there's some times where coaches go from small programs to big programs, or go from the collegiate ranks to the NFL, and they had left something good. Look at Matt Rule leaving the Baylor Bears and going to the Panthers, and now back to Nebraska. It wasn't because he was leaving because Baylor sucked. He just had a great promotion to go to the Panthers. And obviously the culture wasn't that bad, because I believe either that next year or the year after, no, that next season, his that same team coached by Dave, or 2 years later. Okay, so 2 years later.
It was COVID, the COVID season the next year, 2020. And then, 21, they went to the Big 12 and won the Big 12 championship game. Yep.
Absolutely. And what a great game that was. I really hoped Oklahoma State would have got that done, but whatever, here nor there. I like Mike Gundy. Something about us guys in long hair, we kind of stick together. But it's culture, man. What does that mean? From my viewpoint, I think that term culture is also about the young men and their mentality about the program. Okay, when they look at that logo, do they just go, yeah, I play at Miami. I play football at Miami. Do they go out there and play hard for that U? Do they go out there, if they play in Tallahassee, for the spear, for the helmet? Do they go out there and play and shoulder the pressure of being a part of such great programs, or Gators, or whatever great program that they have? And what I mean by all in, meaning win, lose, or draw, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the scheme, I'm going to give myself 110% to this program and 110% to this way of playing football. Whether I like the scheme, whether I think the scheme is right, whether I want to go back and forth and go all in. The offseason is for discussing that kind of stuff. But while we're in season, go all in for what we do. And at Miami, you could argue that it wasn't. No, so many different question marks could be put in there. Is it because of the guy who may win the Bros Award as a defensive coordinator at Penn State? Is it Manny Diaz's fault? Who knows? Is it Mark Richt's fault? Maybe. But those two guys ran into the same situation that Coach Cristobal ran into, with bad culture and having to revamp the mindset and having to get young men to buy in and go all the way in, not rebel, not become selfish, not just think of yourself, but the team, the team, the team. The program. And it's not an easy process to get young men to get in line and go all behind you, especially when it's not lining up with wins. Mark, if we running a 3-4 and running a power I and we win in 10 games, I promise you it won't be too hard to get a lot of people to buy in. But when you switch from the spread to the power spread, that was extremely run heavy. When you switch to a scheme that required so much great communication in the secondary that we refuse to do, as opposed to this up-tempo spread on offenses, and opposed to a heavy zone scheme in the 4-2-5. And things aren't looking right. You're getting destroyed by your rival games. You're getting destroyed by Middle Tennessee State. Clemson's rolling up the score on you. There comes a point where the frustration lines up with young men genuinely just saying, throwing their hands in the air and saying, I don't care anymore. I give up. I quit. I don't want to play here anymore. I don't like it here anymore. We're not getting any better, and throwing up the birdies. But we hope that these things change. And not only does it change based on the young men's mentality, but can we get the people in here who are going to buy into the way that things, because Coach Cristobal is on a 10-year contract. He ain't getting fired off of 5 and 7. Now, if he goes 5-7, year 7, we might have to think about it. But right now, he won't be let go. So it's going to be his way or the highway. And if you don't want to fall in line and you don't want to meet at some kind of medium based on how you want to play and how you want to do things and how he is instructing things to be done in his program, and you don't want to meet in the middle or just completely go all in with him, there's a door. And there's a great opportunity at hundreds, not hundreds, but dozens of other institutions for these young men.
Wholesome Ones here, talking of the Canes. 5-7 season. Now we're in the off season. That means transfer portal additions and subtractions. It means that National Signing Day is less than 3 weeks away as well. And the Canes are looking at a top 10 class.
Mark, the Canes are looking at a top 5 class.
Okay, top 5 class.
Keep going. I don't know if we'll get into the top. It's funny, Mark. The last time it went 5-7, do you know what year that was?
Hang on. 2005 and 7. It was somewhere between like 08 and 12. What year was it? No?
2007.
7. Okay.
You know what recruiting class follows the 2007 season?
Was that a number 1 class? Top 5 class?
Number 1 ranked 2008 recruiting class with Corey Harris and Sean Spencer and Marcus Forston and guys like that, and Ray Armstrong and some of these big name recruits. Now, that number 1 recruiting class only amounted to 9-3 as sophomores and never really touched and developed and got crazy. But who's to say history doesn't repeat itself? That's wishful thinking. I'm hoping that it happens. It would be great if it did. But that's probably wishful thinking. We could get into the top 3 if they were to add the portal with the current players as a combination. But either way, the rating system is something that I'm excited about. But for the most part, Mark, we need to be able to have the right schemes on offense and defense. I like our 4-2-5 defense. I like Coach Steele. The offense is what needs to be adjusted in a big way. And I'm hurt, Mark. I'm hurt. The coach that I wanted to be our OC just took the FAU job an hour ago.
Who was that?
Tom Herman.
Oh, did he? I didn't see that.
Mark, if we just kind of got him to come to Coral Gables instead of stopping in Boca, come on, just 2 hours. Come on down here to the Gables, to the crib. Come to the 305. Tom Herman as our OC just would have made me cry. But remember, Mark, him and Muschamp were the 2 coordinators I wanted. But Muschamp at Georgia, no need for him to go anywhere. And I guess Muschamp just wants to stay. Not Muschamp. I'm guessing that Coach Herman wants to stay as a head coach. So I get it. But we talked about how the portal taketh, giveth, and the portal taketh away. Today, Miami Hurricanes legacy safety cornerback Al Blaze Jr. hit the transfer portal for his last year of eligibility. And also wide receiver Keyshawn Washington left, but Al Blaze, man. Young man that gave his all, Mark, just wasn't the fastest guy. And in a man scheme, had some tough situations where he kind of had some bad looks out there at the cornerback position. We move him to safety, and a bunch of other guys were a little bit more talented, so he didn't get a chance to play as much. We also lost one of our top recruits from class of 2000. Is it 20? Yeah, it might be class of 2020 with Avante Williams. I was jumping up and down for joy when he committed and super excited and like borderline 5-star, number 1 or 2 safety in the country. And he decided to hit the portal. Things just didn't work out for him at Miami either. So those are the 3 guys that within the last 36 hours or so that decided to hit the portal. And Mark, we talked about this last week and numerous amounts of other times that we have been here, that the portal in a situation where it's also mutual it's probably in the best interest of the young man and in the best interest of the program that we go in separate ways for them to go on and make better for them and for us to replace them with a better player or someone, at least maybe not even the most talented player, but someone who's going to believe and go all in and fit the scheme. And there's different situations. There's times where a young man does, so class of 2020, there's times where a young man steps away because he can't seem to get on the field at Miami, and that could be no person's fault. Maybe he's not bad. It's just the people in front of him are better. I would say that's the case of Al Blaze Jr. Just the guys in front of him were more talented. But there are other players that just didn't buy in or complained about things, and it just didn't fit with them, and they decided to take their future in their own hands as opposed to just sitting there with the potty mouth. It's sad. Sitting at Miami, and Corey Gabe was, hey, man, go where you are wanted, go where you could be able to make an impact for yourself and hopefully to enter the National Football League and grow.
Somebody mentioned in the chat here, Cade McNamara, Michigan quarterback who entered the transfer portal a couple of days ago. It's actually just announced here on 247.
Going to Iowa.
Last, hour that he's going to Iowa.
And see, that's what I'm saying. That's great for him. Michigan went a different direction. He wants an opportunity to play. He's a talented young, not amazing, but he could play. He'll go to Iowa. I mean, I thought he would come to Minnesota, but
Brennan Armstrong entered the transfer portal today.
Isn't that crazy? But this is what I mean by scheme. This is what I mean by fit. This young man going into this year was listed as one of the best in the last couple of years. Him, David Leary, and Tyler was in the conversation also. But since 2020, these have been some of the better quarterbacks in our own conference. And Armstrong is leaving. I'm hoping he goes somewhere in the Big 12 or at least goes somewhere where he can get back to being in the RPO spread. Maybe Syracuse. I think he would do well at Syracuse.
Lorenzo Lingard, former Cane, says he plans to enter the NCAA transfer portal after 3 seasons at Florida. Not doing
who?
Lorenzo Lingard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mark, this is what I mean when I say that these star ratings, and it's no one's fault that works there. They're rating the young men based on how they evaluate them. But you got to also be able to pick a school. And when you pick that school, hopefully the coaches and the environment works to not only bring you in and make you a good football player, but continue to make you a better person. And I don't know Lingard as a person. I don't know him, but the things that was said about him coming out of Miami and then him going to Florida and being there for 3 years and not amounting to not much there either. Even after they've had multiple guys transfer in and out of Florida, he still never really made even the depth chart. Tough. It's a tough situation. Hopefully that young man doesn't quit. I think one of the other beautiful things is humbling thyself and heading to a FCS program or heading to a Group of 5 program and actually wanting to dominate and get the statistics could be a great opportunity for a lot of these young men too. Utah State, because of his connection to Ephraim Banda, who was his main recruiter, even though he played running back, his recruiter was Ephraim Banda. While he was in Miami, Ephraim Banda is the defensive coordinator up at Utah State, who has had a couple Miami Hurricanes follow him there. Al Blaze Jr. could also be on the way over there. Avante Williams could be there also. Those two are cousins, Avante Williams and Lorenzo Lingard. And I'm not saying that's the only place they can go. Maybe they do choose to go to a James Madison. They choose to go to a Jackson State with, Coach Prime, as long as he's there, whatever. There's plenty of opportunities for these young men to take their future into their own hands.
All right, folks, please hit the like button. That's a simple task, simple thing to do. Takes a second. Please hit the like button, share these videos out on social media. You're here. Other people could be here as well. So let 2 or 3 know next week. Let them know, because we've got another half hour or so right here. Let them know that we're here talking Canes with the Wholesome One, and get on over to the Wholesome One's channel as well. Anthony Manzano's got a question here. He says, Wholesome One, do you think Frank, Josh, and Mario have to adjust the way they recruit the quarterback position because it seems like Josh's schemes run better with the dual threat quarterback instead of a traditional pro style.
Thank you, Anthony, for the question. Personally, I don't think that Coach Gaddis will be here this upcoming season. There has been rumors about him staying. I don't think so, especially when something that was very telling to me is that Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia both reassured they're going to stay here at Miami. Not rooting against Coach Gaddis or rooting for his demise, anything like that, but both of these young men were very talented prospects over the last year or so. Jake Garcia was the number 6 quarterback in the country, and neither one of them looked like they looked like North Dakota 1A ball. Okay, they looked horrible out there trying to throw the football as far as the route combinations and throwing 6 interceptions in the game. It just looked pathetic. So with that being said, I think it's I really think that they're going to go somewhere in a different direction offensively with whoever the new coordinator is going to be. When it comes to Coach Cristobal and recruiting quarterback, recruiting a young man and getting him in the door is one thing. Having that young man be a part of a scheme, be a part of a system, be a part of a way of playing offensive football to be done in the correct way that fits them is a whole separate thing. What I think Coach Cristobal has to do is shake his way of thinking that offense needs to be played. Come to 2022, almost 2023, and understand that you need a little bit more of a balanced version of the power spread that you like to run. Look at Ohio State, Mark. I'm sorry to say that. I know you guys have been licking your wounds since Saturday. It's a tough one, I understand. I've been there all season. It's all good, baby. But that offense and the way that Coach Ryan Day has coached that offense since before he even became the head coach is spitting out first rounders. It's a great offense, a great philosophy, and the way that he attacks defenses. So I'm hoping that we can get a little bit more balance, not just the run heavy and not just the super pass heavy, but get a little bit more balance on the way that we coach and scheme the offense on Saturdays.
All right. The McKean 83. I feel like our Garcia and TBD problems weren't Gaddis. I say it was Ponce because it was his job to get the ready for the schemes that Gaddis called.
I'm careful with that because I know a lot of people want to throw stones at Coach Ponce. But, Mark, I'm going to ask you this question I asked a bunch of people on my channel. Let's say, for example, you have Larry Johnson, who is the head defensive line coach at Ohio State, correct?
Yes.
Do you think his interior defensive line coach has any more power over Larry Johnson?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Do you think Coach T-Rob, who coached at Miami and left Miami to go to Alabama, even though he's in the Ring of Honor at Auburn, whatever, he goes to Alabama. He coaches the secondary. You know who also coaches the secondary at Alabama?
Nick Saban.
You think T-Rob has more say-so on how the DBs are going to be, how the DBs are going to play and the stances and the way that they need to look over Nick Saban?
No.
Okay. So for us to continue to throw stones at Coach Frank Ponce, and like I said, you could point at everybody involved, and everybody has a pie, has a slice of this pie tasting like crap, and they have a reason for it. I just don't know if we can put that on Coach Ponce when he has to coach the scheme the way that he is being told to coach it, whether he agrees with it or not, because he's just the quarterback's coach, when the offensive coordinator is over there playing coaching wide receivers. That's so backwards, but whatever. Thank you for the comment. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you, Miami King 83, for your comment. I just personally think that that's not necessarily fair to Coach Ponce to put the blame on him, and I get it. You talk about the position coach. but the position coach is directly affected by the play calling and directly affected because he's being told to do something that may not even fit the way he would coach the young men up to be. I will leave it at that.
We talk with the Wholesome One here every Thursday at 8 Eastern time, folks. So make it on back next week and bring some friends with you. Let's do that. All right. Do you have any preference, whether that's at the quarterback position or any other positional unit, guys with NFL backgrounds versus guys that have strictly collegiate backgrounds?
Mark, not necessarily. I believe that they're two separate sports. Yes, it's the game of football. And yes, the NFL has started to add some of the college game and some of the college way of playing things, especially offensively there. But that's not really in my criteria that I've seen. It's a bonus, but it's not something I would say is required. I even look at Michigan. Coach Harbaugh brings in the defensive coordinator from the Baltimore Ravens, the young DC. I think he might have been the apprentice. Yes, he was a linebackers coach and came down to Michigan to be the DC and then went back to Baltimore. His defense looks better now with the college guy over the NFL guy that he had last year. So it's not necessarily something where I think it just is a requirement. You must have NFL experience. You must have been at that level. It's not necessarily even a preference for me because I see it being two different games. I look at even on the defensive line, the specificity of mine. At the National Football League level, there's rarely a time where a guy just whips right around an offensive tackle and makes a sack. He had to use his setup moves and things of that nature to get to that guy. And more likely than not, probably got picked off on a TE stunt or maybe just was a miscommunication on how to get blocked. At the college level, there's times where guys just fly right past people. They just happen to be that much better. Check Will Anderson versus DJ Scaife last year. It just looked like DJ Scaife wasn't even playing. He just happened to be standing out there, trying to stand in front of Will Anderson. So I don't necessarily think that that's a big prerequisite. Again, it's a great addition. It would be really cool, but it could, if let's say, for example, coordinator-wise, they could overwhelm the young men because at that level, it's a true 9 to 5. You're full, you're all in. Here, you still got to go to class, still got weight, still got strength conditioning, still got those kinds of things at the college level. So they may not be required to give as much time as the NFL guys do. So you come with this super complex scheme that requires so much time of study and things of that nature. It may not really work out because of the time that's required to put in to master it.
From a position standpoint, what are your transfer portal priorities? Position 1, 2, down the line.
Okay. Position 1, Miami's defensive line statistically did a pretty solid job, but I think we need to get more difference makers on the defensive line. So Messidor had a good job as him and Daryl Jackson as transfers from West Virginia and Maryland to Miami. They did very well. But there was also guys like Jacob Lichtenstein, guys like Messidor from UAB that were just kind of bodies. We needed more bodies. If we are able to find a way to get some, there's an offensive tackle, former 4-star from Alabama, right tackle, who's in the portal. Not saying specifically that young man, but from that culture, that level of playing, that talent, that size, will be great to bring a guy like that in. And on the fronts, being able to hold off some of these big-time 4- and 5-star guys that Coach Cristobal is bringing in on the offensive and defensive line and replace them with an older guy that has college football experience just to hold them off a little bit. That's big to me because it's like a pseudo red shirt. Let's say, for example, defensive line-wise, Miami just picked up a big 6'7" defensive end who may work his way into being an elite strong side or even All-American 3 technique. Who knows? Strength conditioning. You never know. You put all that protein in their body, 230 could turn to 280 real fast with how they're maybe even in the 300s. You don't know how different metabolisms and bodies react to college strength and conditioning. I say all that to say this. On the fronts, I would love if we can hit the portal again even harder to hold off some of these big time young guys as far as for their body wise, their confidence wise. You come in as this 5-star, you're expected to be this great guy. If you're able to be in a situation where someone like Chase Young, who turned out to be the second overall pick, not many people knew about him until year 3 because he was behind other great older guys. Not calling anybody on our roster Nick Bosa. Not calling anybody on our roster. Is it Howell, number 6, plays for the Bengals now?
Oh, Sam Hubbard.
Hubbard, yeah.
It's Sam Hubbard and
no one talks about that guy. He
Draymond
was
Jones.
amazing. Yeah, Draymond Jones. Now, Draymond was big. Draymond was a big, strong side. 6'5", late 200s. He was huge. He's more of a 4-eye technique at the National Football level. But at Ohio State, I loved watching him play both because on early downs, he was inside, and sometimes he would go outside if they had a lighter tackle at right tackle. There were other instances on early downs he was on outside and moved inside. Coach Larry Johnson is a hero of mine. I love that guy. Great defensive line coach. But again, blabbering on to say this. First position is going to be in the fronts. I don't care if we're talking about nose, if we're talking centers, guards, tackles, defensive ends, defensive tackles. We need pure edge rushers. If we're able to get some people that are going to hit that portal that just so happen to not be happy where they were, but were great producers, bring it in. Secondary, Miami lost within the last week. Miami has lost a former starting safety in Avante, a rotational safety in Al Blaze Jr., a linebacker safety hybrid in Gilbert Frierson, a linebacker safety hybrid in Avery Huff, and a safety in Jalen Harrell. So our back end is going to need some more bodies. The guys we have on the roster, some of them are pretty talented. Oh, and Tyreek Stevenson said he's going to head to the NFL draft. What do you have? A bunch of very talented, and we got the second best non-quarterback player in the country coming in Kermani McLean in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks committing and signing with Miami. And it'll be there in January, early enrollee. But even then, that's a freshman. If we were able to find a way to get some talented guy out there. And I would definitely emphasize the speed, Mark. The size, I get it. You want to see the 6'1", long arm guys, I get it. But if he's a Blazer and he just so happens to be 5'10", or just so happens to be 5'11", bring him in. Because we need speed in that secondary if we're going to be a man coverage secondary like we were this past year.
Okay. Florida State lost a player in Sam McCall, who was a top-level safety recruit who didn't work out with them. I think he's from Georgia. Do you know?
I don't know. If he picked Tallahassee, I'm not looking into him.
You don't want him coming your way. You wouldn't take him?
I didn't say I wouldn't take him.
Oh, okay.
I would be very skeptical. There were a lot of, and I don't like to say these things because fans get upset when young men do hit the portal, but there was a particular post and picture that went around that surfaced that was saying came from him where he was publicly bashing their program and their staff. So I don't know if Coach Cristobal would be into that kind of stuff. Again, I'm walking a fine line here because I could be proven wrong in the comment section. Maybe it wasn't his post, but it did go very viral in association with him, where they were in the locker room and it just happened to be an orange shirt thrown on there. Don't know if it's an orange Miami shirt, orange Florida Gators shirt, whatever. They say it's from Lakeland. So it's from Lakeland, Florida, where he was teammates with Cormani, who picked Miami. So again, sometimes young men do lash out because we don't know the situation, but I try, especially on places like this, a professional scene like this, just be careful about the rumors or off because I don't necessarily know. I believe the young man is extremely talented. I know that, but I don't want to throw any stones at him if it's not really true. But either way, There's always going to be conversation. And Coach Cristobal has said that he's not just signing you because you're a former 5-star or this talented player. Who are you as a person? Because, Mark, remember, we're in the middle of a rebuild. You can't have people in there creating distraction. Can't have people in there being extremely selfish when you're in the middle of a rebuild.
I'm interested to hear your take on this one.
Hit me.
I know that you're a Mario Cristobal guy. And 100%. I know that you were bouncing through the roof when he was hired. And I know you still trust his leadership and his ability to build a program.
I wonder if this is going where
all
I
of
think
that.
It's going.
However, most coaches that are eventually going to be successful show up and you see immediate results in some way, to some degree, to some level. Not that they go from being 7-5 to winning the ACC and going to the playoff, but you see, while they're building the program, you see benefits to their coaching style, their ability to coach up the current players, all of that. We could give 100 examples of that. So we're looking at a team, he didn't take over Kansas or Rutgers or Stanford or Cal or one of the worst programs in the Power 5. He took over a roster that's basically ranked in the top 15 in the country, and a team that, even with Manny Diaz issues and really not being ready to be a head coach at this level, still went 7-5 last year and went 8-4 the year before. So are you in any way disappointed or reassessing his abilities and where this thing's headed?
Disappointed, hell to the yeah. I mean, there's no way around 5-7. And the beautiful part about it is, Mark, I said this before. When you really like somebody, or you really want them to get a job, or you really want them to get a promotion, you're even harder on them. Now, I'm always going to be professional in the way that I carry myself, but there were times where I was very, very upset in the product in which that we saw. There were times, and I accepted this, Mark. After Bethune-Cookman, I was extremely down. I don't know if you saw it live or whatever, but I knew watching that, I go, this is going to be a rough one. It's going to be rough. And I know that he's not this great X's and O's guy. I know that he's not this great Saturday coach. So I'm going, good God, this might be a 8-4. This is catastrophic. I mean, I felt like we were more talented than at least two teams. So it would flip us from just making a bowl to being at least 8-4, counting wins like Duke and Middle Tennessee State. Shout out to Mike Elko for winning ACC Coach of the Year. What a great job by him at the University of Duke. But extremely disappointed. Disappointed in the outcome. Disappointed in them not being able to find an answer. That was something that I was able to say I was going to hang my hat on. You got such an experienced staff, such an experienced coach, has been a part of 2 or 3 rebuilds. In his time at Miami, when he got there in '97, they were coming off sanctions and they were not a very good team, and was a part of them building a great team. He goes to Rutgers, that was 1-9 when him and Schiano left Miami to go take over Rutgers, and they go on to be one of the better teams in college football. FIU, he built not great, but gets them to their first and only 10-win season, get them to one of their only bowl wins. Their only conference championship is still associated with Coach Mario Cristobal. So he has done these things as a rebuilder. But again, Mark, as bluntly as I can put it, extremely disappointed with not being able to find answers in games. With you talked about this team not being prepared. Well, week in and week out, I didn't see it being very prepared. And when you talk about unique situations, you talk about situations that, yes, if you want to pinpoint them with USC or with Duke, or with Notre Dame or with LSU. Yes, Miami looks horrible. But we also aren't able to be there every single Saturday or every single day, Mark, and see how these young men responded during the week. And we have a professional as a head coach. He ain't going to come on and say, these guys freaking suck. They gave up. No one wants to fight. No one cares. They're showing up late to practice. Players are getting suspended. They're getting in fights. They're leaving the locker room dirty. They're not going to class. They're not trying. I'm not saying these things happen. I'm not saying these things didn't happen. But he's not going to come out and expose them for that. And it got all exposed on Saturdays because, Mark, as they say, you do the little things right enough, they show up all the time. And I thought that Coach Steele would be able to find solutions and not keep going to this cover 0 or this cover 1 and putting players out there that we know can't play that scheme, can't play. They don't have the speed to play that man coverage, but for some reason you keep calling it and you keep putting them out there to do it. We're not rotating younger guys in. We didn't give young guys an opportunity to see if they were different. This is probably the most angry I've been thinking about this because I had accepted it early on. I had accepted early on that this was a slow team. They looked like they didn't care, and they were not playing hard against Bethune-Cookman. And people told me that I was crazy. It's just Cookman, Holloway, chill. I'm like, no. They got a brand new coach, all these facilities, all this money, all this NIL, and they are still going out there like they don't give a damn. And it showed up multiple times this year. Now, I'm not saying everybody deserves to be kicked out. What I'm saying is either way, and however you want to come up with the answer to it, it needs to be found. Whether that answer is young men finding new homes or the grown-ass men, the coaches, finding new homes. But as that head man, it all starts and stops with him, our head of football operations, our general manager, Alonzo Highsmith, and athletic director, Dan Radakovich. But again, as relates to football, it's going to fall at the feet of Coach Mario Cristobal. So, yes, I'm still all in with Coach Cristobal. I love him, appreciate him as a person. I think he's a great guy and a really good coach. There's a lot of things that he has to look within himself to find out also. You know, us not knowing when to call timeout, us getting false starts after a timeout, us looking ill-prepared. On the road, Miami looked like a better team than at home. You got to figure out what the hell's happening there. I don't know, is it your artillery? Are you giving them too much time off? You know, are you waking the guys up too early before home games? Who knows? There's a lot of stuff that he has to fix with himself and with this program. And not just, he's doing a great job of the recruiting and the talent acquisition, but you just throwing 5 stars at stuff and not putting them in the right situation coaching-wise and culture-wise won't fix it. And I trust him, Dan Radakovich, and Alonzo Highsmith to get it done.
Some of the first-year head coaches you threw out there were obviously going to be successful. You know, Brian Kelly left a tremendous program at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman walked into a great situation. It goes back to what you said earlier when you said, you know, you kind of took a round number guesstimate as to how many situations does a new coach come into that's a bad situation versus a good situation. Well, that was obviously ready-made to win. So that aside, Brian Kelly goes to LSU, and even though the roster wasn't left in the best in a typical LSU place, it was still lots of talent there. Of course, Lincoln Riley, in no other era would he be able to take over at USC and do what he did this year, but the transfer portal's ready-made for just completely turning over a roster and everything. The one that gets me is Mike Elko at Duke. Wow. Never been a
great
head
coaching
coach.
Job. Nope.
You know, we're not talking about some great head coach that we knew, okay, well, he's always turning things around. It's this guy or that guy or this guy. You know, defensive coordinator at Texas A&M comes in. They won one game in the ACC the last 2 years put together. They were 1-17 in the ACC.
Doormats, Mark. Complete doormats. And they're this is
good.
crazy to say out loud, guys. They are one high-low penalty away from arguably being in the ACC championship game playing Clemson.
Yeah.
Now, yes, they did lose to Georgia Tech on a field goal, and that was one hell of a game to do a film breakdown on. Two good teams as far as playing each other. Maybe not win-loss record, but they played really well that day. And healthy. Jeff Sims was on that, and things of that nature. But yeah, man. I agree. I agree 100%. And this is why I say sometimes it could just be your philosophy. It could just be the way that you sound, the way that these young men respond, because Duke was never had this great recruit out there or these amazing. I mean, their defensive line coach is our former defensive line coach at Miami, and they wrecked us like no tomorrow, and Coach Jess Simpson. So he put together a nice staff out there at Duke, and these young, they responded to him. And this is why I say that you got to be able to point a large chunk of that pie to Coach Cristobal. Because how did your young men not respond to you? The two-time national champion, the rebuilder. They didn't even buy in for you. And that's where it hurts the most. And for the Lane Kiffin guys that were laughing and saying, oh, Lane wouldn't have done this, Lane wouldn't have done that, Lane would have won all blah, blah, blah games. Cool. He's not our head coach, so it doesn't matter. Coach Cristobal is.
One other note about Mike Elko, and then I'll drop the Mike Elko take on this, is the other thing that's impressive to me is how competitive Duke was this year. So you can go across the country. We see it all the time. Guy will take over a program that's a 2-10, 3-9 kind of team, and he'll be able to figure out, kind of piece together a 7-5 team. But it's like when they lost those 5, he still did a great job to lift them up to 7-5. But man, they got completely outclassed 3 or 4 times when they didn't lose big. They lost every game by 1 score. They were in every game.
Coaching. X's and O's wise. I mean, I'm watching them play Miami. I'm like, wow, okay, what hurt them before? And again, they forced 8 turnovers in one game.
Yeah.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
We fumbled the ball to kick return.
They were gifted, some of them. Some of them
right.
Gifts. Yeah.
Some of them were just complete lobs with 3 DBs over there and no one's even in the vicinity. And then, of course, Miami made their adjustments, came roaring back and got to 31 while Duke was at 20-something, took the lead, and then Duke just had all those turnovers. But I think it could be similar to a not even what could I say that the Elko at Duke could be? Maybe Shiano at Rutgers. But even then, it took him a little bit to build it. But then eventually it was really tough and spitting out NFL guys. Who was a good defensive coordinator that was just waiting on a head coaching job? And it wasn't like his name popped up all the time. I mean, he got the Duke job. It's not like he got the big name brand job. He got the Duke job. So it wasn't, he must have just had such a great, these young men just responded to him. It's just that simple. They went out, they played hard for him, and I don't know if they'll turn around and be the same team next year.
Sure.
Maybe he gets fired 3 years from now. Who knows? I don't wish that upon people unless you coach at Tallahassee, and I hope you suck. But, what's the long-time defensive coordinator that's who I was trying to think of, the Kentucky head coach?
Mark Stoops.
Stoops. That's what it reminds me of. The way that they play, it feels like Stoops at Kentucky. I don't know if it's just because it's the blue and the blue eye associated that way, but man, the way they play tenacious defense and it's multiple and it's aggressive, I really, 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 I really like Coach Elko there. I liked his defenses at A&M. I really did. And a couple of those guys, much to the chagrin of the Miami Hurricanes, but I wonder if a couple of those guys that keep hitting the portal follow him to Duke from A&M.
You can follow the Wholesome One on Twitter. You see it right there, at Holloway _52 right there.
That's me.
Get on over to his channel too, right here on YouTube. If you just throw in the Wholesome One or Wholesome One Holloway, you will get right there and follow his work. Wholesome One, we always appreciate it. It's always a good time. Always learn a lot.
Heck yeah, I really appreciate it. Oh, Mark, can I ask you one question? Do you got to go? So with the Rose Bowl taking on this 12-team playoff,
yeah,
and accepting that, are you for or against college football playoff expansion? Are you for the 12? Yes or no?
12, no, because it has nothing to do with the number of teams. It has to do with the number of teams not fitting into a bracket. You have to award buys. I do not trust humans to determine buys. It's too unfair of a advantage for these reasons to me. As soon as you say this team has a bye, this team doesn't have a bye, I'll explain it this way. In just a few days, we're going to have the selection of the college football playoff the day after the conference championship games. Okay, let's say we had a 12-team playoff right now. And we know that the top 4 conference champions, first of all, they got to determine who are the top 4 conference champions. Well, that's a tough decision right there. Let's say USC and TCU win this week and Clemson wins. Or let's say USC loses and the Pac-12 has a 2-loss champion, Utah. That committee's going to decide who's 4 and who's 5. And number 4 gets a bye, number 5 doesn't. Let's say they say, Utah just beat USC, we're going to elevate them to 4, Clemson goes to the 5. Mm-hmm. Well, that number 5 team has to play. And let's say they have to play, let's say they give everyone a week off. 2 weeks from championship weekend is the first round of the playoffs. That number 5 team has to play number 12, and number 4 gets to sit and watch number 5 and 12 play. So the obvious advantage to having a bye is you can't lose.
Correct.
That's the obvious advantage. You can't lose versus a bye. The other teams have to play. So the number 5 team in the country has to focus on the number 12 team in the country and do everything they can for the next 2 weeks to watch film, study, practice, get ready to play number 12. They can't be focused on, well, we're going to beat number 12 and let's get ready for 4. Or, okay. In the meantime, number 4 gets to sit for 3 weeks and study those 2 teams. And they can divide their staff and say, Jim, John, and Jay, you study Clemson, you 3, we're going to give you film on UCF or whoever the 12 seed is. And, we're going to have a breakdown. We got 3 weeks to prepare for this game. They can't prepare for it at all because they got to focus on each other. So I think the advantage from a preparation is huge. And then obviously wear and tear versus getting to rest. And also the probability that somebody's going to get hurt to the degree that they're really compromised or they're out. So between wear and tear, injuries, and game prep, I think the buys don't make any sense. It's not the NFL where a buy is determined by a logical system where, let's say, your Baltimore Ravens go 14-3 and they win the AFC North, and the Kansas City Chiefs go 12-5 and win the West. Okay, well, you earned it. You got a very similar schedule. Everybody plays everybody.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's the big thing is the schedule, the scheduling difference.
You earned it.
Yeah, right.
They're trying to compare Clemson and Utah. They get the same record. They're going to just freaking look at a resume and be like, well, we got to give it to Utah. But it's not earned. It's not an earned buy. That's the issue I've got.
My issue is we've been doing this for about 10 years, and I don't really know. I could probably count on 3 fingers how many times everyone can unanimously say that the seeding was done correctly. And now we're going to add to the seeding by adding 8 more seeds to, a big cluster mess anyway. So, I mean, I get it. Maybe I'm small-minded. So people think that you're supposed to be 16, 24. I'm not for that. I used to be in the 6 camp because I thought 6 was great. Because, I mean, we even look at it right now where they say the top 4 and the first 2 out. Okay, well, maybe if the first 2 out were a part of it, and then you just had 7 and 8 were the first 2 out. That was for me. But, there comes a point where it's like, well, you kind of just got to get with it because there's nothing we could do about it.
Nope, it's coming.
It's coming. It'll be here sooner than we know it. We got 1 more year of the regular 4 team as it goes right now. But my only thing, and I like to ask questions as opposed to assume, because I think assuming is just not it, man. How do you feel about this conversation that's going around saying that these games don't matter anymore? I mean, let's say there's already rumors out there, Mark, now about Michigan. I hate to keep bringing them up on I know, I'm sorry, man. Michigan and Georgia, regardless of what happens on Saturday, they still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So who's going to say that we don't get to a point somewhere down the line, especially in the 12 team, where they say, you know what? I don't really matter about winning the conference. Conference doesn't bother me. Who's to say they don't sit their starters the second half? Or who's to say game stuff like that doesn't happen? I mean, the NFL definitely did it. Does it? Undefeated teams at 15-0 sit their starters in the last game of the season because it doesn't matter. They're the first seed. It doesn't matter either way. So I figured I'd ask that. What do you think about that becoming a thing where they just say, hey, these games don't matter. We're going to make it anyway?
Well, the more you expand a playoff, the more inclusion there is, the more opportunity or possibility that there are going to be teams that can drop a game and it doesn't matter because they build up a 12-0 resume and they're not going to miss the playoffs. So they can weigh the benefit versus the downfall to losing a game. Right. Better seeding. Does it really matter? Let's stay healthy. We don't care. Let's lose a game. The one thing I will say, we have that right now, as you mentioned, this weekend, and I'm not going to say this for sure. I'm almost positive because, as you well know, I got pretty much every result and conclusion of college football years to years locked in here. But I won't say this for sure. I'd have to go year by year and really think about it. But I will say most likely we've got the most unimpactful weekend of college football championship games we've ever had. To think that the SEC champion could not make the playoff. If it's LSU, they're not making the playoff. That could ever happen. The SEC champion doesn't make it. Or on the flip side, if Georgia wins, it didn't matter. Either way. So doesn't matter for Georgia. Doesn't matter for Michigan, most likely. We've got another championship in the ACC that doesn't matter because neither one of those teams are making. So we only have 2 out of 5 that matter. I don't remember a weekend like that.
I don't either. And I'm also hoping that you don't have a blowout because for some reason we're all human. So we drastically flip when we see a blowout. I mean, the 2014 national champions were listed as never going to make it. And then they blow out Wisconsin and they get the 4th seed.
Yeah.
So I guess it's all for ratings though.
The one thing I will say about this new format that does prevent what you're talking, it doesn't completely prevent it. It safeguards a lot of situations is the conference champions will be in the playoff, number one. So it makes all the conference championship games meaningful. And you have to win a conference championship to be a top 4 seed. So like Georgia tomorrow or Saturday, Georgia would have to win or they're going back to be a 5 seed and they got to play in the first round.
I like that. I mean, that's why I ask.
Again, and the other part of that, if you're Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, whomever you want to throw out that's usually, 11-1, 12-0, and could be in that position to say, you know what? Yeah, we'll rest our players and not worry about it. Okay, you rest your players. Georgia, do you want to go play in Madison, Wisconsin in December? Do you want to go play in Ann Arbor in December? Do you want to go play in Seattle in December? Wherever. That's what you're risking.
So the conference champions get automatic bids?
The conference champions get automatic bids, and the top 4 seeds that get buys all have to be conference champions. So like last year, Alabama, Georgia, even though everyone thought they were the 2 best teams in the country, the loser was not going to. Georgia would have been a 5 seed last year after they lost to Bama, playing in the first round of the playoffs. They'd have played at home, but they would have had to play an extra game.
I don't mind it at all. I like that.
Yeah,
okay,
that
cool.
part of it I do like.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's why I say you're the voice of college football. You're able to get me. I mean, I saw the 12-team thing, and the first thing I thought of is, oh crap, we got the 12th best team trying to fight for the Natty. Yeah. Jeez, we could barely find 4 to put in there now.
True.
But I mean, you also think that there's year in and year over. There may be one year where there's 6. There may be a time, Mark, and who knows if this will ever happen. There could be a time where you got 6 undefeateds in one year. Or there could be a year where all 5 of the highest seeded supposed to win the championship, they all get upset. Now what do you do? So being able to have 12 kind of keeps it all in there. So
since you brought up my team, this is how interesting Ohio State's history in the playoff has been. Whether you like them, hate them, whatever, I don't care for anyone who's listening, but just think about the intrigue every year. We're on our 9th year of this playoff. Mm-hmm. Ohio State in 2019, they were just a shoo-in. They were 13-0, Big Ten champs, 2 seed. Boom, they're in. 2020 was kind of weird because of COVID. They only played 7 games. There was a big controversy over, well, they're number 2 in the country, but they only played 7 games. So throw that out. Every other year, all 7 years, including this one we're talking about right now, they're always on the 4 or 5 line. Every year, they're either the last one in or the first one out. Every year, they've been 4 or 5.
That's an interesting fact. I didn't know about that.
Go through every year of the playoff.
I mean, them in Alabama. I mean, you get them in there, that might be a national championship. I don't know.
Last thing I'll bring up, because I got to run off to my call-in show, is it's funny you bring up Bama too, because I do these call-in shows and we go on for 3 hours and I hear from everybody, and of course everybody wants to talk about the playoff. It's funny because it seems to be about split between people that want fresh blood, new name, new storyline, let the little guy get a chance. TCU, they want to see him, and even if they lose, they're saying, hey, they played an extra game, 12-1, they went to the conference championship, let them in. And, USC's kind of a different deal, because even though this is the first time they've had a shot at this, they're USC. So it's different because they've got blue blood forever. But
cousins to the West, baby.
But this is their first time that they've had a legitimate shot at the playoff. Versus about half the people that at least respond to my channel are opposite. They're basically, we don't care who wins the games, what the results of the games are. We know that Ohio State and Alabama are 2 of the 4 best teams in the country. So just put them in, because we don't want to see blowouts, and we just want to see them in there. And we want to see the most talented players and the most talented teams. So just put them in there.
Yeah. And I could tell you, in my time of the playoffs, I've been around from my times as a player, through my injuries, through student assistants, through graduate assistants. They've been around, and I've had just at different maturity levels for me. I've had different viewpoints, because when it first came out, it was all about the 4 best. So it's like, okay, well, regardless of record, if I know that this team is just an uber talented team, it's a great prospect, great brand, great logo, okay, put them in. Yeah, if that's the conversation, then you go Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama. If that's what you want. But then one year was the most deserving. Then the next year it was a blue blood. I mean, it's every single year it had been this new criteria as to what should be in the 4. So I hope that TCU, and even though it's hard to root against my guy, Coach Kleiman, hard to root against my guy, but I want Texas Christian to get it done, man, because I want to see them undefeated. I want to see them get in there and line up. And of course, I'm rooting hard for SC. You know, my cousins to the west, distant cousins of the Canes, the USC Trojans. And I think that they could be one of the only people that could break that Georgia defense with that offense and that great quarterback play.
Yep. All right, man. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate y'all for being here. Have a great day.
Falcon Rex, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you coming in for that one. Miami #1 forever.